In late 2015 or early 2016, I saw a short YouTube video where someone remixed Adele and Steve Aoki. I don't know why I clicked on it because I don't listen to either artist. But when I clicked, I saw it was a joke. A joke by Joe Pera. I'd never heard of Joe Pera, but I was bored at my internship at IndieWire, so I looked him up. He had a short web series with this guy named Connor O'Malley called How to Make It in USA. The episode where Connor calls the cruise line to get Joe on the ship still has me laughing as I type this. So obviously, I love Joe Pera. I've actually seen him live. But right now I want to focus on Connor O'Malley, who I've also seen live twice. Because you probably know Joe, but I think you need to know Connor. Around the time I discovered Connor O'Malley's work, he was writing for The Seth Meyers Show. He'd found fame on Vine, but by the time I was really getting into his comedy, Vine wasn't a thing anymore. Someone posted these insane 17-minute compilations of Connor's Vines on YouTube. He'd run up to cars in the middle of New York City that were stopped in traffic, and he'd say all this crazy shit. And you could tell that behind the persona, there was an intelligent man who knew so much more than he was letting on. 3 days after my IndieWire internship ended, in January 2016, Connor posted his first YouTube video, as far as I know, and it was called New York's #1 Masturbator. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen, and I showed it to everyone I knew. I might be mixing it up because there were a couple of these things where he went to a porn convention, but this situation was hilarious. He was interviewing people at this convention like some sort of lovable, socially inept loser who wanted to have a good time but was also conflicted that his grandpa was dying and he chose to come to the porn convention over spending time with his dying grandfather. I wondered how he got the people he was interviewing to open up in this really strange environment. Did they think he was just using this for his personal use? I mean, they had to have known this was going to end up on the internet. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe people shared things because his character was so excited and so unassuming. I sometimes think he's like a modern Peter Sellers in being there. Maybe he's not a blank slate, but he's so impressionable that people seem to trust him with their secrets. Or maybe people just answer his questions because of the power of a camera and a microphone. Slowly, Connor began building his YouTube channel every few months. His persona became more aggressive and more naive and more hopeful and more confused and more unhappy and just consumed by internet culture in the worst possible way. He became the face of the man we do not see. The man whose face hides behind the computer screen. A man that people want to pretend doesn't exist. But he does exist. And Connor taps so well into his consciousness that I can't help but laugh. At some point, Connor tried putting out a pilot featuring Joe Pera called truthhunters.com. I have probably seen it 25 times all the way through, and I think it's like 30 minutes long. Then he made another web series with Joe Pera and Carmen Christopher called Little Banks on Wall Street that seemed to have almost no views when it came out, but is just absolutely hilarious. Then he went to Trump rallies in 2016 and showed a side of America that I honestly didn't realize existed at the time. It became clear to me that this character Connor was playing was a modern man. And he was also clearly a product of America. And so I pieced it together. Connor O'Malley's persona was one version of the modern American man. The man he was playing was so clearly built somewhere in the Midwest with strip malls and excessive courtesy and an aggression and an obsession with being a hero and not really knowing why or at what cost. When I was in LA, I was lucky that a friend told me Chris Patowski was going to be interviewing Connor at UCB. Connor walked past me to get in the building and I was so excited. For reference, I worked on Ryan Gosling's directorial debut Lost River in Detroit, and I was more excited to see Connor than Ryan. The interview had maybe 12 people in the audience. The interview was serious, and it didn't seem like it was designed for laughs. I don't know if Connor was making up his whole life story about his dad being an elevator repairman, or him being a garbage man, or going to Second City and then meeting his wife, Adie Bryant. But I was so happy that he was calm and he seemed so genuine. I was like, holy shit, this guy is a brilliant performer willing to strip himself of all inhibition. Years later in Detroit, I saw him perform his stand-up solutions set live. I was laughing so hard, I thought I was going to die for a second because I couldn't breathe. His energy was insane. He's loud and bold and willing to make an immense, calculated but simultaneously adaptable fool of his character. Out of nowhere, the venue fucked up his set. His PowerPoint crash in the midst of what I later learned by watching the set on YouTube was one of the funniest parts. But Connor didn't seem to get that mad. The calm, genuine guy I'd seen in that interview at UCB years before slowly seemed to appear as his character simmered away from him. He called Rachel Callie up to the stage, and together they just kind of talked and entertained us. And as they were talking as people and not characters or personas, I couldn't help but think about performance. When Connor's computer crashed, he dropped his mask. And then he literally put on Jim Carrey's mask from the movie The Mask for his pilot-turned-short film The Mask. The Mask is one of the most original visions in years, and I thought it was going to elevate Connor to a god-tier level. The Mask showed that Connor was a visionary with camera phones, 360-degree cameras, and the selfie stick. He took this, what I call modern American man character, and made him scarier and unhealthier than ever. I guess the world wasn't ready for his character and the presentation of it, and the strange truth of it all. He was moving on from the funny guy who yells at cars, to a great comedian, and to an artist who could make me laugh, but also feel scared or tense or uneasy at the same time. So when he dropped his short film Corey's, which he co-directed with Dan Straight, I feel he was trying to see if he could combine his unique ways with a more traditional cinematic sense. Sort of seemed like David Lynch, perhaps. Rest in peace. You know, when Lars von Trier made Breaking the Waves, he filmed it on 35mm, scanned it to VHS, and then scanned it back to 35mm to evoke a nostalgia or an idea that we were watching something being watched. When Connor uses his phone or selfie stick or 360-degree camera, he shows us the modern day as it is. He is the master of that. Which leads me to Rap World, a film that looks back at 2009 in a very bizarre but honest way. Just dudes being dudes. I laughed, but it also made me sad because I felt like I grew up knowing guys like the ones in the film. If Connor's story is true, he didn't want to repair elevators. But I think his work elevates our reality and art too. And it can shoot you down like a broken elevator and then carry you back up in a sort of manic depressive, all over, up and down way. I think that Connor belongs on the big screen. Not just in small parts in great films like I Saw the TV Glow, which you should watch if you haven't. I think that Connor is an everyman for a certain type of guy you might not realize exists or might not want to know exists. And he plays that everyman brilliantly. And he's made me laugh probably more than anyone. And I'm grateful for that.